Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander, Tough Rules, and Cool Interactions, episode 77. Today's episode is going to be a big one, as the new March of the Machines set we are getting has a whole new card type, and with it there are a whole lot of questions as to how this new card type works. I will be starting with things that I believe are more simple, and then as the episode goes on, I'll be getting into more niche situations that you may rarely see come up in a typical game of Commander. However, I still want to cover them to help you better understand how all of this works, and then I'll splash some other simple things in there as well towards the end. Please check the timestamps in the video's description to help you find the specific area or topic or question that you do have a question about, as I know I will not be able to cover all of the possible crazy interactions and scenarios. Please ask your questions down in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them in the comments. I hope that you do watch the whole video in its entirety though, as there are some really cool things in the middle and towards the end. So now on to the new card type, which is Battle. So first up, let's make sure we know exactly how a battle enters the battlefield. Comprehensive Rules 310.2, when a battle spell resolves, its controller does put it onto the battlefield under their control, but 310.8a states that as a battle enters the battlefield, its controller chooses a player to be its protector, and which players may be chosen as its protector are determined by its battle type. If it has no battle types, its controller becomes its protector. Currently in Magic, we only have Siege as the sole battle type, and Comprehensive Rules 310.11a, as a Siege enters the battlefield, its controller must choose its protector from among their opponents. Only an opponent of a Siege's controller can be its protector. One last detail of how battles enter the battlefield, Comprehensive Rules 310.4b, a battle has the intrinsic ability of this permanent enters the battlefield with a number of defense counters on it equal to its printed defense number. So, what does all of this stuff actually mean? Well, here's a few questions I imagine some people will ask, and I'll follow them up quickly with their answers, so if you want a chance to figure out the answers yourself, then please do pause the video after the questions, as I'm going to go pretty quick. Then, after these questions, I'll get into some more of the meat of battles. If your opponent plays an Invasion of Arcavios, and they pick you as the protector, can you sacrifice the Invasion of Arcavios to something like Baron Master Wizard to pay for his activated ability that asks you to sacrifice a permanent? In Magic, you can only sacrifice permanents that you control, and while you are the protector of the Invasion of Arcavios, you are not the controller of it, and therefore you cannot sacrifice it for any sort of payment or because of any effect. Next question. Do battles enter the battlefield tapped because of their landscape orientation? The answer to this is that no, they do not enter tapped despite them being turned like a typical tapped card. We can see in Comprehensive Rules 110.5b, it states that permanents enter the battlefield untapped, unflipped, face up, and phased in unless a spell or ability says otherwise. And when we look at battles, we can see that there is nothing on these battles that state that they enter tapped. Does that mean that you cannot tap a battle? No. You actually can tap one, in which case you would turn it from its landscape upright position to the portrait orientation. You may not think that this comes up often, but a card like Flame Fusillade, which says, until end of turn, permanents you control gain, tap, this permanent deals 1 damage to any target, and in fact you can use that battle to tap and deal 1 damage to itself, which is something that we'll get to here in just a little bit. If you cast Invasion of Arcavios and you have it enter with the protector that also controls a Vorinclex Monstrous Raider, would his replacement effect impact your invasion? His ability states that if an opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many of each of those counters on that permanent or player, instead rounded down. So, in this case, again, while it's entering with the Vorinclex player as the protector, it is still entering as a permanent that you control. So yes, their Vorinclex would see its 7 defense, and you would attempt to place 7 counters on it, and then that action would be replaced with you only placing 3 counters on it. In this case, though, that's actually good for you with how battles work, which, again, we'll get onto later in this episode. But that means that if you are the one playing with battles in your deck, and you also have cards like Vorinclex that increase the counters that you place onto a permanent, then you should be careful. If you control the Vorinclex, and you played the invasion of Arcavios, and then it would now have 14 counters being placed on it, making it more difficult to defeat. Speaking of defeating a battle, let's dive into that now. So, of course, battles have a benefit for when they enter as their battle side, but most players will want to get to their other side, as that will oftentimes be the real effect that they want. So let's get into how you will defeat a battle. Comprehensive Rules 310.5 states, battles can be attacked. That's probably the easiest rule we'll go over for today. Just battles can be attacked. Comprehensive Rules 310.6 states, damage dealt to a battle results in that many defense counters being removed from it. Then, Comprehensive Rules 310.8b states, a battle's protector can never attack it. A battle can be attacked by any attacking player for whom its protector is a defending player. Notably, a siege battle can be attacked by its own controller. Then, Comprehensive Rules 310.8c states that a battle's protector may block creatures attacking that battle with creatures they control. Creatures controlled by any other player can't block those attackers. And then Comprehensive Rules 310.11b states that sieges have the intrinsic ability of, when the last defense counter is removed from this permanent, exile it, then you may cast it transformed without paying its mana cost. So any player that isn't the designated protector can attack the battle, which means that you can use this politically in some cases. Like maybe you get someone to attack your invasion of Kaldheim so that it can flip into Pyre of the World Tree, and you promise to use its ability to damage someone else's creatures that are being problematic. Or maybe you get them to attack your invasion of Amonkhet, and when it flips into Lazotep Convert, you have it enter the battlefield as a copy of someone's Reclamation Sage that's in a graveyard, so that you can destroy someone else's problematic artifact. Also, this makes it clear that no other player but the protector can stop you from attacking the battle. Other opponents can't use their creatures to block your attacking creatures when you're trying to defeat your battle. These rules also mean that it's not just creature combat damage, but any damage that will remove counters. And we can also remove the counters in a way that isn't damage. If you have a Hex Parasite or Vampire Hexmage, cards that let you remove counters from permanents, then you can use those and the counters will be removed and the game will see a last counter that is being removed. Simply destroying the battle, though, is not defeating it. So you cannot use something like a Vindicate or an exile effect on something like Anguished Unmaking to just defeat it. You must deal damage via combat or things like a Lightning Bolt. One important note is from Comprehensive Rules 310.7 that says, if a battle's defense is 0 and it isn't the source of an ability which has triggered but not yet left the stack, it's put into its owner's graveyard. So what this means is that if you were to play a Solemnity which says counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands, and then you were to also have out a Enchanted Evening that says all permanents are enchantments in addition to their other types, then this means that the intrinsic replacement ability that the battle has of entering within number of defense counters would not happen, and it would simply exist on the battlefield with 0 counters, But there is a difference between the battle never having any counters to begin with and therefore being at 0, and actually removing enough counters from it so that it gets down to 0 counters. So instead of it exiling and letting you cast it transformed, it would be sent to your graveyard as a state-based action, meaning you have no chance for you to interact or respond to this. This also means that if you were to use a stifle type effect to counter a targeted, activated or triggered ability to counter the triggered ability of exiling the battle once the last counter has been removed, it wouldn't get a chance to exile. So it would still be a battle on the battlefield that has 0 defense counters on it. So the next time state-based actions are checked, it would again just be sent to the graveyard. And finally, if you were to make a battle into an enchantment with something like Enchanted Evening, and then you used Mirage Mirror to become a copy of target enchantment until end of turn, then since that Mirage Mirror never entered the battlefield as a battle, it never had the counters placed on it, so the game would check state-based actions and see that it is a battle with 0 defense counters on it, and it would send it to the graveyard. So long story short, if the counters are removed by any means, it transforms. If they never existed at all, or if they existed but the trigger to transform it is countered, then they go to graveyard. Now that we've covered a bit more of the weird things with battles, I want to step back into some things that will likely come up a lot more often in a game of Commander: mana values and mana costs. Once you have defeated a battle and trigger its transform ability, it lets you cast the backside of it. So let's take a look at Invasion of Arcavios. Once you've removed its 7th defense counter, you trigger the ability to exile it and then cast the backside of it, which is Invocation of the Founders. And we can see that it's an enchantment, which means if you were to control an enchantress, like Tuvasa the Sunlit, that you would get the draw a card trigger from her. But what about the invocation as it exists on the stack and on the battlefield? We can see in the top right of the card that it does not have a mana cost. So what would happen if it were to be mana drained while on the stack? How much mana would be added to the player's mana pool? What would happen if someone cast an Abrupt Decay? Would they be able to target the invocation as a permanent with 3 or less mana value? And finally, how much devotion would your invocation count towards your Thassa Deep Dwelling that wants to see a blue devotion of 5 or more? The answers to all these questions can be found in Comprehensive Rules 712.8e, which isn't specific to battles, but does include them as they are a transforming double-faced cards, or TDFC, and that is what 712.8e does cover. It says that while a transforming double-faced permanent has its back face up, it has only the characteristics of its back face. However, its mana value is calculated using the mana cost of its front face. If a permanent is copying the back face of a transforming double-faced permanent, even if the object representing that copy is itself a double-faced permanent, the mana value of that permanent is 0. So in the case of Invasion of Arcavios transforming into Invocation of the Founders, while on the stack, a mana drain countering the Invocation of the Founders would later add 5 colorless mana. While on the battlefield, an Abrupt Decay would not be able to target the Invocation of the Founders, and while on the battlefield, the Invocation of the Founders would not add any devotion to your Thassa god. The Invocation of the Founders does have a mana value of 5, but it doesn't have a mana cost, which means that it doesn't have any actual mana symbols or colored pips to count. Okay, now back to something that is specific and unique to battles. Here's the scenario. You played your Invasion of Arcavios and set player B as its protector. You assign your enormous Baloth to attack the invasion, and then you also declare your Apex Devastator to attack player B, who is again the protector of your invasion. Player B is at 10 life, and Apex Devastator deals 10 damage, and player B has no blockers to assign. But then, before going to damage, player C uses their Advanced Scout's activated ability to give your Apex Devastator first strike until end of turn. And this means that you will end up killing player B with first strike damage before your enormous Baloth gets to deal its damage to your battle. Well, thankfully, Comprehensive Rules 310.1 has you covered there, as it states that if a battle that isn't being attacked has no player designated as its protector, or its protector is a player who can't be its protector based on its battle type, its controller chooses an appropriate player to be its protector. If no player can be chosen this way, the battle is put into its owner's graveyard. So basically, this means that even though you've killed player B early with first strike damage, who was the protector of your battle, you still have your enormous Baloth that is still an attacking creature that is attacking the battle, and you'll then get your chance to deal the 7 damage to it after the first strike and transform it. Even if you don't have enough damage to defeat the battle, you'll still have your creature deal what damage it can, and then after the damage has been dealt and you leave the combat step, your Baloth will be removed from being an attacking creature, and so the state-based action of Comprehensive Rules 704.5W will be checked and see that your battle no longer has a protector, nor it no longer has any creatures currently attacking it, so you will now choose an appropriate player to be its protector, and if you cannot choose an appropriate one, then it is just sent to your graveyard. Okay, so I've already been over a whole lot, but I have one last thing to cover. What happens when you animate a battle into a creature through whatever means, like using liquid metal coating to turn one into an artifact, and then Karn the Great Creator's loyalty ability to turn an artifact, your battle, into a creature? And then after all of this, you try to attack or block with that battle creature. Can you do this? Well, this one's a bit odd. We do have some comprehensive rules to back up the answer, which is no, they cannot attack or block. The comprehensive rules I refer to is 506.3E and 506.3F, and they respectively say, if an effect would put a creature that's also a battle onto the battlefield attacking or blocking, that permanent enters the battlefield, but it's never considered to be an attacking or blocking creature. And then F says, if a resolving spell or ability would cause a battle to become an attacking or blocking creature, that part of the effect does nothing. So those cover an effect that would bring them in as an attacking creature or blocking creature, but what about my liquid metal coating and Karn scenario? I actually couldn't find any specific comprehensive rules citation for this one, so if any of you know where it is, please do comment and let me know, and I will update the video's description to include that. Maybe I just was not having a good time of searching for it. I read through it quite a few times, but I am very tired from reading through all this stuff, so that could be a problem. But for now, there is a tweet from a WotC employee that I will link down in the video's description, and here is a screenshot of his tweet that states, battles that become creatures and are still battles can't attack or block. If a battle somehow becomes an attacking or blocking creature, it drops out of combat. And then he also adds that if a battle becomes a creature and is no longer a battle, the rules for battle no longer apply to it, and it can participate in the combat as it must yearn to do so. So there we go. We have a tweet for now. Not any actual... All right, whatever. Okay, so I sort of also lied. I have one more thing to cover, but I will do it as the bonus question. And I'll give you a hint as to why as a bonus question rather than just explaining things, because the rules governing the transforming double-face cards, the TDFCs, will provide the answer here. These are not new rules exclusive to battles. So here's the situation. You cast Mirror Hall Mimic and have it enter the battlefield as a creatureified, we'll go with that, a creatureified version of a battle that you already have in play. So it does enter with the defense counters on it. You later defeat your mimic version of that battle. What happens? Will it exile or will it not? If it does exile, will you be able to cast it as the transformed side? If you can cast it as the transformed backside, then will it be cast as the ghastly mimicry backside of the mimic, or will it be cast as the backside of whatever battle that you had it copy? Or do you get to choose which of these two is the answer? Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta. My goodness, this was the densest episode I think I've done yet. I will be stunned if anybody is still listening. And now to start editing and rendering. Oh dear.